Hey everybody. So we are getting into 6.2 today, use linear equations in slope-intercept form. So yes, continuing our lessons on slope-intercept form. Today we have a kind of a simple way of breaking down all of these problems, and that's using this little three-step method here. So start by getting the title, getting the three-step method, and then I'll show you what's going on. Okay, so ultimately today our goal is going to be writing the equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, here's the thing: is we're going to be given less information than we're used to being given. All right, so we're going to have to find some things ourselves, and these problems they're going to be a little bit more elaborate than the ones before, but we're ultimately doing the same thing. We're writing equations in slope-intercept form: y equals mx plus b. Okay, the first thing we're going to want to do on most of these problems is find first the slope. Okay, and we know how to find slopes in multiple ways. We can look at a fraction in slope-intercept form. We can look at a graph. We actually know a formula, slope formula. Okay, the second thing we're going to want to do is find the y-intercept by plugging in a point, x comma y. Okay, and then the last thing, after we do those things, we'll be able to write our equation in slope-intercept form by plugging in the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so let's try this out. Okay, so first thing, go ahead, copy these directions, get this, and I'll show you what's going on. Okay, so here's what it says. It says, what is the equation of the line that passes through the point 1 comma negative 3 and has a slope of negative 4? Okay, so first thing, what is the equation of the line? Well, if you guys think about it, all of these equations today, we're going to be writing in slope-intercept form. Okay, y equals mx plus b. Okay, here's what we have. We have m, right? They're telling us the slope's negative 4. What we don't know is the y-intercept. We need to figure out what that is. Okay, well, luckily they're telling us that our line goes through or passes through this point, 1 comma negative 3. So we can actually plug that point in and be able to find our equation, okay, or our y-intercept, and then get our equation. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I have this thing written as step number 1, which is find slope, and we have the slope. Let's just go ahead and point out step number 1, that our slope equals negative 4. Okay, the next thing is finding our y-intercept. This is, the bulk of the work here. Let's go ahead and do it here. We need to just plug in our coordinate, which remember, this coordinate is an x comma y. All right, so if you want to write it as step number 2, you don't have to write step 1, step 2. I just think it works well for this lesson. But let's go ahead and write out. Okay, we have our y value. Remember, that's this number here. So we have negative 3 equals, we do have our slope, which is a negative 4, okay, times x, which is 1, okay, plus b, our y-intercept, which is what we don't know. That's ultimately what we're going to be solving for. Okay, so now we have something we can, solve. We have all of these numbers. We have just a single variable we can solve for b. So let's do it. First things first, let's simplify. We got a negative 3. Negative 4 times 1 gives me a negative 4, okay, plus b. Okay, now solving for b, getting rid of this minus 4 by adding 4. Okay, negative 3 plus 4, or 4 minus 3 gives us a 1. Okay, so I'm getting a 1 equals b, or flipping it around, b equals 1. Okay, really, I'm going to put this in blue because that's our y-intercept. All right, so now we have the two things we need to be able to write this equation in slope-intercept form. We have our slope of negative 4. We have our y-intercept of positive 1. Let's go ahead and write it out. So y equals, our slope is negative 4x, and then our b value is a positive 1, so plus 1. Okay, so there is the equation of the line with a slope of negative 4 that crosses through the point 1 comma negative 3. Okay, I'm going to have you guys try one of these on your own, and then we'll kind of get into some others that are giving us even less information. Okay, so on this problem, go ahead and do the same process here. Find, I guess, first point out what the slope is, and then plug this information in to slope-intercept form. And you're going to need to solve for the y-intercept, and then after that, you can write your equation. Give it a try. Okay, so first things first, step number 1, let's point out our slope is a positive 2. Okay, Step number 2, let's go ahead and plug in this information and we will find what we're missing. All right, again, this is my x value, this is my y value, right? So we know our y value is a 3 equals our slope, which we know is 2 times x, which is on this one is 6, plus our y-intercept b, which we don't know. Okay, and yeah, just like the last problem, let's simplify first. So we got 3 equals 12 plus b. From here, solving for b, getting rid of 12 by subtracting. Keep 3 minus 12 gives us a negative 9. And there it is, our y-intercept, our b value is negative 9. All right, now we can write our equation. Again, remember, when you write the equation in slope-intercept form, all we're doing is plugging in our slope and our y-intercept. X and y is part of the form. That just stays x and y. Okay, so last thing, y equals our slope of 2x, or then x, and then our y-intercept, which is a negative 9. So we don't put plus minus 9, just put minus 9. Okay. And there it is. That is the equation of the line that passes through 6, 3. It has a slope of 2. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is basically the same process, but in the context of given a graph. All right, so go ahead, copy this here, get this graph, and then we will write the equation. All right, so literally, again, same directions. All right, so this is why the steps are kind of nice, because it goes, okay, what are we doing first? Well, step number 1, as we know, is we're going to figure out what the slope is. Okay, on this problem, it doesn't explicitly tell us what the slope is, but it's kind of sitting there in front of us. We can see the slope, the rise over run, is sitting right there. Okay, so 3 over 2 is going to be our slope. Let's start with that. Okay, so there's step 1. Step number 2 is going to be basically finding our y-intercept by plugging in our information. And again, we're plugging that information into good old slope-intercept form. I just keep writing this over and over because it's actually a good thing to have right in front of you as you plug these numbers in. Okay, so let's go ahead and do it. Here's the thing. We need to plug in a point that our line goes through. And if you guys notice, they've shown us this line goes through this point, 4, 1. All right, so just like before, I'm going to plug in that number right there for y. So my y value is a 1. Okay, and then my slope is a 3 over 2. And my x value is this 4. And what we don't know is our y-intercept. And that's one thing I want to point out. If we were given this line, say this line showed where it went through the y-axis, say way down here, say it said, oh, it went through at -5, we would be done. We wouldn't even need to do this process. The reason why we're doing this longer process is because we can't tell where this line crosses the y-axis. We can see it's down here in the negatives, but we're not exactly sure. Okay, and that's why we need to plug these numbers in and find the y-intercept. All right, so that's a really good thing to realize. Normally, if we're given a graph, we can write slope-intercept form really quickly as long as we can see the slope and the y-intercept. We can't see the y-intercept. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and let's solve here. Okay, so we have some simplifying. So 1 equals, here when we do a 3 over 2 times 4, remember the 4 is multiplied by the 3 and then divided by the 2. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay, and then plus b. Okay, and I'm kind of looking forward. I actually kind of guessed the answer on this one. When I go to solve for b and subtract 6, 1 minus 6, I'm going to get a -5 for my b value, which is I was just kind of looking at it and kind of looked like, oh yeah, maybe it does cross down here at -5. That was just a good guess. All right, but now we're certain our y-intercept is -5. I'm going to flip this around, right, in blue, so it's obvious. Okay, now we can write the equation, plugging in our slope, plugging in our y-intercept. So y equals a 3 over 2x minus 5. There's our answer. All right, so I'm gonna have you guys try one a lot like this. Again, on this problem, we can find the slope. We can't tell where the y-intercept is. We know it's gonna be somewhere up here. You know, maybe it's gonna, I'll take another guess, maybe it's like +8. All right, but we're not sure until we plug this information in. So go ahead, first do step 1 where you identify the slope, and then you can find the y-intercept by plugging in all of these, this point as well as the slope. Okay, give it a try. Okay, so first thing, rise over run, 2 over 1, our slope is just that. Okay, step number 2 is finding that y-intercept. All right, again, we cannot see where it crosses. Normally we could, but these problems don't allow us to see it. Okay, so we need to plug in our numbers. I'm going to first write out slope-intercept form. Okay, my first thing, my y value, the y value of a point that the line cuts through, we can see our is a positive 1. Okay, our slope is a 2 over 1. Our x value is this negative 4. Careful, it's easy to get those two things mixed up. And then the slope-intercept is what we don't know. All right, so a little bit of simplifying. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 over 1, negative 8. Okay, and I was kind of close on this. When we go to solve here, adding 8 to both sides, it looks like we're going to get 9 equals b, or flip it around, our slope-intercept is 9. Okay, so let's go ahead and write our equation now. Y equals our slope of 2 over 1, which, by the way, you could write that as just 2 if you wanted. That's fine, but I'm going to leave it as a fraction. X, and then our y-intercept of positive 9. Okay, last type of problem gives us even less information. Go ahead and copy this, and we're still going to do the same process, but we're going to have to find even more information. So try to, or actually copy it, and then we'll try it. Okay, so it says write an equation of the line that passes through negative 2, 5 and 2, negative 1. All right, so this line goes through those 2 points, and they want the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Okay, first things first. Step 1, we need to find the slope. Here's the thing. They have not told us it. They haven't given us a graph. If we wanted to, we could maybe draw a graph. Okay, but I don't know if that would be actually any easier than using the other thing we know, slope formula. Okay, so this might not be a bad idea to just kind of remind yourself of what the slope formula is in your notes. Take a second and copy this here. Okay, but if you guys remember slope formula, it's really simple. All we need to do is subtract our y values and subtract our x values, and we have the slope of the line. Okay, as long as we plug in 2 points that actually fall on that line, which they give us on these problems. Right? So let's go ahead and do it. Here's the first thing. I want to make sure I get these numbers in the right spots. So I'm going to label these points. Okay, this is going to be my first x and my first y. So x1, y1, and this is my second x and my second y, x2, y2. Okay, now we can plug those into our formula here. So y2 minus y1 on the top. So let's start with that. y2 is a negative 1. So I'm going to say slope equals y2 negative 1 minus y1, which on this is a 5. Okay, down on the bottom, same idea with my x's though. x2 minus x1, x2 is a 2, minus x1, which is a negative 2, so minus negative 2. Okay, be careful, be easy to forget that second negative there and just go, oh, 2 minus 2. Okay, be careful. All right, so yeah, it looks like we got a little bit of simplifying here. So on the top, it looks like I have a negative 6. On the bottom, double negative turns into a positive. 2 plus 2 gives me a 4. Okay, so I get a negative 6 over 4, and usually we reduce any fraction we can. So let's go one more step. Let's reduce this down to a 3 over 2. Okay, so there is our slope. And I guess, maybe I should have written this out in like red. Let's see if this will let me do it there. Yeah, all right. Okay, so there is our slope. Okay, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is finding the y-intercept. Okay, I'm going to just put it over here. Okay, so step 2. Okay, just like before, I'm going to plug in my slope and a point to then solve for b, my y-intercept. So first, let's write out slope-intercept form. All right, here's the thing. Plugging in a point, I actually have options. I can plug in either one of these points, and I'm actually going to get the same answer for b. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you choose. I say choose whichever one looks easiest to you. I'm going to choose this second one here because I just like how the numbers are a little smaller. Okay, so I'm going to plug in negative 1 for y. My slope we figured out was a negative 3 over 2. My x value for this one is a 2. And b is what we don't know. All right, so simplifying, let's see. I'm going to apply this negative to the top. So this is a negative 3 times 2, which is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3. All right, from here, solving, just going to add 3 to both sides. It looks like I'm going to get 2 equals b, or flip it around, and my y-intercept is 2. All right, so yeah, a bit more work to be done, but now we have it. We can write our equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals, the slope was a negative 3 over 2, x, and our y-intercept is a positive 2. Okay, so this is kind of why we broke this thing down and why the steps were so important, because eventually they give you less and less and less information, and remembering, oh, step 1, I need to find the slope. Sometimes it gives it to you. Sometimes you need to find it yourself. So it's just a good way of doing these problems. All right, so last thing, go ahead and try one of these on your own. Go ahead and do the same thing. Start by plugging these numbers into the slope-intercept form, or sorry, the slope formula, and to find your slope, and then you can go from there. Okay, give it a try. All right, so real quick, first thing, here's my x1, my y1, my x2, my y2. Let's plug it into the slope formula. Okay, I've started to memorize this. So y2 minus y1, so y2 minus y1, which is a negative 2. Careful about getting that double negative. On the bottom, x2, 3 minus x1, 8. All right, so doing a little bit of math here, looks like double negative, we're getting a 10 over 3 minus 8 gives me a negative 5. Okay, so this can actually just reduce, or actually it divides if I want. I can just write this as negative 2. You might have wrote it as negative 2 over 1. That's fine, but I'm just going to use a negative 2. Okay, so there is my slope. Again, I want to make this red just so I can kind of keep the pattern here. Come on, there we go. Okay, so there's step number 1. Step number 2, let's find our y-intercept by plugging all of this stuff in. Okay, to slope-intercept form. All right, so plugging in x and y, again, I have options. I can plug in either one of these numbers or these points, and it'll work. I'm going to use this one this time. Okay, so my y value is a negative 2. Okay, my slope we just figured out is also a negative 2. My x value is a positive 8, and we are looking for b. All right, last thing, looks like we're getting negative 2 equals negative 16 plus b. Add 16 to both sides. And it looks like we're going to get 14 equals b. I'm just going to go ahead and flip it around. B equals 14. Okay, so there's the two things I need to write my equation. So last thing, y equals m, my slope, negative 2, x, and my b value, positive 14. Okay. And again, just to give you context, this is the equation of the line that passes through these 2 points. If I were to graph these points, you don't need to do this. I want to do one last thing. 8, negative 2, to the right 8, down 2, 3, 8, to the right 3, up 8. This would be, my line, a very inaccurate version of my line. But you guys can see it has a negative slope. Okay, yeah, we have a negative 2 as our slope. It's crossing way up here in the positives. Yeah, we got a way positive y-intercept. Okay, so this just goes to show, yeah, this is actually the line that goes through these 2 points. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this lesson. All right, everybody. Yeah, so kind of a long one, but hope you learned something. I'll see you guys in class. Bye.